us know when we're live.
Chair Long, it looks like we are now streaming.
Madam Chair, you're live.
Thank you. I will call this Charter Review Commission of April 27, 2023 to order. It is 5:08 p.m. And I will ask Ms. Martin to call the roll.
Commissioner Blondus,
Present.
Commissioner Deerdeck,
Here.
Commissioner Dixon, Commissioner, I'm
She
sorry.
won't be attending. She is ill tonight and cannot attend.
Okay, so she's excused.
Yes.
Commissioner Granillo,
Present.
Commissioner Ives,
Here.
Commissioner Montoya,
She will not be able to attend either, so she's excused.
Commissioner Ortiz. Okay, Commissioner Ortiz, Commissioner Ortiz.
She's having trouble with her mic, but she is present.
Yeah, I can see her. So Commissioner Pettis.
Present.
Thank you both. Chair Long,
Here.
you have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes that anyone wishes to make to the agenda from the board or from the commission or from staff? Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Ives to approve the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Blondus. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And none opposed. That motion passes. Next is approval of the minutes of our last meeting of April 13, 2023. Are there any changes anyone would like to suggest to the minutes? Okay, well, I've got a couple of hands here. Yes, Commissioner Blondus, start there.
Okay, thank you, Chair Long. On page 8, it's really just perhaps a typo. The first sentence, monstrously unwieldy rather than unwelding.
Oh, sorry. Unwielding. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pettis.
I just wanted to correct, I'm listed as being present last meeting and I was not.
Thank you.
And are you listed as present too? And Commissioner Blondus was not present either.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Ives.
I would just request one correction. It's at the bottom of page 11. The line reads, currently Commissioner Ives said it is best to give where we have ended up for the comments as to what is posted rather than red lines. And that's not a model of clarity. And I hope I more intelligently, what I would propose to change that to is Commissioner Ives said it is best to post where we have ended up or comment, comma, rather than the red lines. So that was all.
Right.
Thank you.
I like that better too. All right. Is there a motion to approve with those changes?
Move for approval, Madam Chair.
Okay, Commissioner Ortiz has made the motion to approve the minutes with the revisions that have been suggested. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Ives. All those in favor to approve the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes have been approved. Then we have something called presentation, but I don't think we have a presentation, do we? Attorney, we do not. So we will go on to public comment. First, I'll see if is there anyone from the public that is attending tonight that would like to provide us with comment? Anyone in the room? No. Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone online? Okay. So no one online either. We did receive written public comment. I know that the city attorney provided you with a couple items of public comment that had been provided previously. And now that our website is up and running, we did receive some targeted comment just today on a couple of the topics because they're divided by topic, which allows the public to comment on those. So I thought that that was working really well. It's a new development for us, so I'm hoping that we get more public comment as people are aware that that's available. Is there anything that the commission would like to say about any of the public comment that was received? Oh, yes, Commissioner Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'm actually excited that we have maybe a handful of individuals in the city that are paying attention and listening and taking the time to share with us their comments. I think it's extremely important that we have benefit of that. I'm glad there's an opportunity to do that. I'm just a little concerned that the nature of our documents, if you print them all out, they're quite thick, will preclude a lot of individuals in the city from reading through them and being able in a timely manner to give us their perspective or their comments based on what we're looking at the moment. So I want to thank the individuals that provided public comment. I also would like to indicate that because there's some instances in those comments that the individuals raise some very valid points. They talk about transparency. They talk about some of our recommendations not helping and towards the goal that we thought we were moving towards. They talk about some transparency issues. I would like for the commission to be able to spend time to go through those comments and lay them over the language that we're presently looking at to move forward to the city council so that we make sure that we're adding value, so that we make sure that something that they saw that we perhaps failed to see is investigated, is looked at, is researched, and that we assure ourselves that we are doing the best job to get good information, good best practice information to the city councilors and not set them up for looking at and reviewing and spending a lot of time on something that, had we spent a little bit more analysis on, could have been a better product for them. So I'm hoping that, Madam Chair, as we discuss later on meetings, that we allow time between now and our next meeting, and clearly before we vote, to look at the comments and make sure that our recommendations are in line with what our intent was. The other piece to the public comments, Madam Chair, is I'm concerned that perhaps we haven't given the public enough time to look at our information, and I'm just wondering if this commission, I know we talked about it at our first meeting, I'm wondering if this commission is open to the thought of having a public hearing simply for allowing the public to come on an evening somewhere to give their comments, to gather the data and look at that. I know we have an issue with time. I'm not sure how that impacts our ability to hold a public hearing. And I don't know if we have an opportunity or the ability to extend the time for another month. I'm not sure how hard set the May 10th deadline is for our work to be done. I guess that's a question for you, Madam Chair, and the attorney. But I believe because the documents are pretty much out there this week, that we really need to give the community more time to look at it. I believe I would be doing a disservice, and I wouldn't be doing what I'm asked to do here to represent my district and to make sure that they're given an opportunity to see our post end result. And I think another hearing or a hearing would help that. Now, there's other ways to do that, and I'm open to that. I just believe at this point in the game, we're so close to turning in a document to the city council. I believe the comments that I've seen, the few that I've seen are good. And I believe we need to analyze them and then let other people have the opportunity to provide their comments. So that's my 2 cents on the comment issue and on perhaps another public hearing or meeting to allow the community to share with us what they feel is important.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Commissioner Ives.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would certainly agree. It would be wonderful to have a public hearing specifically designed to bring in comments from people all across the city. Of course, we can note that these are public meetings where there is opportunity for public comment, but yeah, it certainly has not worked as we would have hoped. And I will say, I'm glad to see a number of members of the press here tonight who hopefully will be getting out that word to constituencies across the city that we welcome those comments, hopefully with references to the site where the comment form is and where the various documents are located so that we can have that process be engaged in earnest. The only other thing I was going to note was that I did want to follow up on some of the input from the public comments when we get to the
items that they commented on.
new topics.
Oh, new topics.
Well,
Okay.
certainly during, yes, on the items they commented on, but during the new topics as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Good idea. All right, so I think the commission is sensing, and this is an issue that I discussed with our attorney, that we are going to have another meeting. This is not our last meeting, and we'll probably have more than one so that we can get to a vote on final recommendations and a vote to approve the report that will go to the council. In terms of a public hearing, Commissioner Ives, I agree, these are public meetings and we invite public comment. I'm open to suggestions as to our next meeting, which looks like it can be in person. Maybe, another blast on our website, something on the city's banner that says, this is where the final vote will be taken. Please come and have your voice heard. Maybe that would suffice. But I don't know that just calling one of our meetings a public hearing is going to get people to come, but I could be wrong about that. As to the date, yes, the date when we are to have our work concluded is in the resolution that set forth the items we were to consider and constituted the commission, and that is May 10th. So that's what we've been trying to work for. I guess I will ask Aaron to weigh in on any latitude there.
Thank you, Chair Long, Commissioners. It is the date in the resolution. So if we wanted an amendment to that resolution or a restated resolution, there's not another governing body even scheduled before the date it's due. So it would not be possible to adopt an amendment to that resolution at this point. Unless the governing body wanted to call a special meeting to introduce a resolution, call another special meeting to adopt the resolution, and then they would have a new date before the 10th. There's been no request thus far.
I wouldn't think so. So I think what we need to try to work toward that deadline. And I know that everyone has been responding to additional meeting dates, and I thank you for that. We're going to have some meetings kind of crunched up here at the end. So I really appreciate your willingness to do that. It's not easy with schedules and trying to get this done, but we'll get there. So I think also on the public comment there, as you mentioned, Commissioner Ives, there are some new topics maybe that were presented. There's also some comment on the topics that have already been referred to the committees. And so even if you can't get the full committee together, but perhaps before we meet to vote on our recommendations, if those committees that have that particular topic could look at the comments that are addressed to their item and see if that makes any difference in the recommendation, or if there's anything you want this commission to know about that in your thinking, that would be most appreciated. And I know that's yet another meeting before next week when when we plan to meet, but maybe you could do that by telephone and just give us your thoughts. That would be very helpful. Because I too was excited to see the comments coming in, and I agree they were well done and succinct, and it was very gratifying to see that, and I'm hoping we'll get some more. Okay, so we'll go on to our action items and discussion, and I think we're all agreeing tonight, or we're sensing that we're not going to take any vote on these tonight. I mean, that's the sense of the commission. But we do want to hear reports from the committees, whether anything has changed on the recommendations that you have and any new developments. I know that on the committees, there has been some language that has been, or some of the proposals have been reworded based on comments from this commission at our last meeting. And that's what we want to hear about. So let's go to the governance and financial audit subcommittee, and we'll start with Commissioner Deerdak.
The only thing that will occur to you as you read our latest edition is that there was quite a bit of discussion within the committee about advice that we had received, that it appeared that the charter as it exists today references a committee and only one, and there is no other reference to the finance committee elsewhere. And so that had seemed like an outlier. And at one point, we issued an edition that struck that reference, but we had quite a discussion about it as a committee again after the last meeting and decided to return that language as it exists in the charter today, because we are proposing a significant section on financial management, and so many entities throughout the civics of our state do have finance committees and expect finance committee activity in the process. And so on balance, we listened to any different way to slice that and settled on returning to the language that exists today. Other than that, the material, I believe, and Maria and Lily May might correct me if I'm mistaken, but it's my belief that other than that, the rest of it is as the commission has seen it. Did I get that right? I got that right.
Yes. Okay, good. And I think there were probably some comments received as to your committee items that you may want to look at.
There were, I've noted each of them, and I will arrange for the group to have an organized discussion about them.
Very good. Okay, and I want to thank this committee for their efforts at getting these items separately listed on the website and working with staff to do that. It was a lot of work, even over the weekend. So I appreciate that.
If I may echo your thanks to Erin and her colleagues. We did our best and you did better than your best, and the product is excellent. So thank you.
Yes, thank you all.
Thank you, commissioners. And, Pat Figelli is online here too, and I know she's been contributing quite significantly. She's in the guest room over there listening. And Marcos Martinez, I know, has also contributed significantly. So I very much appreciate their help.
Let's go to the Subcommittee on Human Rights and Social Issues. Commissioner Ives.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Based on comments and review, we did have a few proposed modifications to, excuse me, two of the measures that we had been looking at. The first, just taking them in, I have the paper in hand. With regards to the sort of food policy, a statement in Article 2, we were proposing to modify the language to address some of the concerns that Commissioner Durdak had raised in the last meeting. So the language currently has read to ensure that all in Santa Fe are well-fed and not experiencing prolonged hunger or lack of nutritious food. Our city government shall take those steps necessary to provide our community with adequate food resources in a sustainable manner that promotes the local production of food and the wise and conservation-minded use of water. And some concern was raised that that might entail potential litigation against the city. So the modification that I would suggest to folks gathered here to that same sentence, which would begin working to ensure that all in Santa Fe are well-fed and not experiencing prolonged hunger or lack of nutritious food. Our city government should undertake efforts to ensure that our community has adequate food resources made available in a sustainable manner that promotes the local production of food and the wise and conservation-minded use of water and city land. So the shall to should, so that it's won't be perceived as necessarily a strict obligation on the city to ensure that, which it certainly can't do as an initial matter, that everybody receives sufficient food. You can only do so much. So that seemed a reasonable compromise on that particular point. And then with regards to the Article 10 proposed amendment, which deals with charter review, adding a new sentence at the end that would read, topics must be submitted by March 15th to allow time for the commission to consider them before their June deadline. So part of the challenge, even now that we experience, is getting recommendations on proposed changes that are coming meeting before our last meeting or then our imminent reporting out. So just having folks understand, and mind you, that proposal expands the time in which the commission would meet to a year to begin with. So as well as necessitating additional meetings and engagement of the public. So it's really just designed that to say, bring it in by this time so that there's time for the commission to really consider it rather than do an incomplete job.
So are those topics that would be submitted by the public or by the council or by the commissioners or by everybody?
Yeah, just everybody. And the council would certainly have the opportunity, as they did in the current circumstance in the resolution, creating the commission to provide topics initially. But again, it's a slow process getting everybody in the city engaged and capable or in a position to be able to provide additional topics or comments. So.
Any questions yet of Commissioner Ives? I think he has more to come.
Actually, we didn't have any changes to the Human Rights Commission provision at this point in time. And those were the three that we had considered. So my additional points I can easily save for the introduction of potentially new topics. I will say that I have talked, I think, with all of the members of the committee except one, and there is concurrence that the various committees and other groups, and I have language which I can share, that are formed, the commissions, et cetera, that are formed by the city should follow the requirements of the Open Meetings Act.
So maybe I got this from, I think, the meeting attachments today, the 2.01 human and civil rights and the red lines that are in here. That is what we saw last meeting. Okay, there were no additional changes. Okay. All right, anything else from that subcommittee?
I would invite any of the other commissioners to certainly weigh in at this point, or happy to answer any questions.
Yes, Commissioner Duda.
Thank you. I appreciate the committee looking at the agriculture piece and making some changes. I guess I looked at it also, and I noticed that someone writing a charter from scratch may not have included Article 2 the way it is anyway. Article 2, I think, has 7 provisions now. Some of them seem to state values. These are our aspirations as a city for how we would want to improve the society in which we live. And what the committee has done is to ask us to propose the inclusion of this agriculture provision within that article. There's a certain interest in not including aspirations in a constitution. But the city is already way down that road and already has 7 of them. And so the idea of adding another one, as I said to Commissioner Ives, I've thought about that a lot and have decided that it's time to relax. And I guess I just better. But I will point out to my colleagues that this city has taken huge steps on 2 programmatic aspirations that identify us as a city among cities. One is we are a sanctuary city. That appears nowhere in the charter. And I can imagine hearing all the arguments why it doesn't belong in the charter. Another is we are a living wage city. And we plow away at that. And the citizens of this town really put effort into that. Doesn't appear in the charter at all. And so it seems to me that, you know, if all of us were royalty and could dictate what happens, none of us are. Do charters properly include what Santa Fe includes in Article 2 or not? We have not plowed that field at all in this commission. It would be a strenuous project. But I'm just saying that I have decided at 2 o'clock in the morning to relax about this one because getting into it entails much too much. So I'm going to relax.
Thank you. Commissioner Ives.
And, you know, certainly at some level, a charter is different than a constitution. And of course, if you look at the United States, the Declaration of Independence is probably as good a statement of values as you could ever hope to see. And that very much is considered to be, you know, a founding document within our country. You know, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are, you know.
Exactly.
So I think it's actually kind of
Deliberately
nice.
not in the Constitution. Sorry.
No, but very much a part of defining who you are. And I think it's quite elegant that it's in our charter, quite frankly. But
All right. Any other comments or questions at this time? Okay. Now we go on to new topics for consideration by the commission. I guess Commissioner Ives has something to propose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two items here tonight. Again, we hadn't introduced language before relating to, if you will, subsection D that we were to consider, which was whether all bodies of city government, including those established as advisory in nature, such as committees, commissions, special committees, task forces, et cetera, should comply with the State Open Meetings Act. And based upon speaking again with other members within the committee, we would propose to add this statement to the charter in some appropriate location, which is all bodies of the city of Santa Fe government, including those established as advisory in nature, such as committees, commissions, special committees, task forces, and others, shall be subject to and comply with the requirements of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act. And I thought it was because advisory bodies under the Open Meetings Act do not necessarily have to comply with the Open Meetings Act because they're not making any final decisions, which are the sort of hallmark of open meetings. It seemed appropriate to call that out in a way that would make clear that the intent is that these advisory bodies should comply.
And Aaron, the city does require that at this point, or not for all committees?
Chair Long and commissioners, we require it to a certain extent. One exception that we've created this year is to allow 100% virtual meetings. So the times that we've met 100% virtually, those were considered an exception to Open Meetings Act that we created, because Open Meetings Act only allows for virtual attendance if it's difficult or impossible. So we've allowed our advisory committees to make a vote that it's in the best interest of the public to hold in a virtual meeting, which we have the opportunity to do also on this agenda tonight. So that's one exception that's been made. There have been discussions, particularly with our disabilities community and advisory board, about some of the hardships that the Open Meetings Act imposes upon them because they are not able to circulate written products amongst themselves in advance of open meetings. And they feel like that, at least the chairperson right now, has raised that as a potential concern. And I think was advocating modifications to the city's policy, which is right now via resolution in one of our procedural rules, that our advisory committees are generally held to the Open Meetings Act with these exceptions that I've mentioned. And then also there's been at least one committee since I've been with the city who had some other specific deviations to allow for certain types of conversations to occur. And that was the public safety special. Maybe Albert remembers the specific name of that task force that was convened in the last 2
Community
years.
Health and Public Safety,
I
Community
think it's maybe
Public Safety. Chris Rivera is the
Correct.
chair.
Yes, Councilor Rivera and Villarreal are I think the co-chairs of that one. So that committee, I think initially had some deviations as well that they thought were helpful in order to get certain types of public feedback. I think that part, they did update their resolution. I'm not sure that's still in there, but I think they found other ways to gather that type of information. So those are some of the considerations that have happened at the city currently. The 100% virtual, I think, is one where we're entirely deviating currently for advisory committees. And then there's been requests for other types of deviations, such as being able to write amongst committee members outside of committees in order to facilitate conversations. Those are obviously still subject to IPRA, which I think that committee was advocating as a safeguard on the information to the public, but no changes have been made for that purpose yet.
Are those all virtual meetings? Are they on YouTube and open to the public to view?
Chair Long, commissioners, some of them are. Not all of our facilities are equipped to manage that. So if they're held here in the council chambers, it's easier for us to do that. And then a couple other locations. But primarily from this chambers, I think it's the easiest we could ask IT as well. I think this room, we improved the technology quite a bit. That is not a requirement for having 100% virtual meeting. We do retain the record of the Zoom meeting, I believe.
Oh, yeah, you can record that.
Right. They're not
Mhm.
necessary. They are probably I can't say for sure if they're all uploaded, but they should all be available.
Yes. Commissioner Pettis.
Aaron, so just to clarify, then these all virtual meetings are by definition not public meetings?
Chair Long, Councilor Pettis or Commissioner Pettis, they're not being held subject to the Open Meetings Act. I think they're public. We're posting them publicly. They just aren't following the Open Meetings Act to the letter.
Uh-huh.
In many ways, they still are. We're posting an agenda. We're announcing it at least 72 hours in advance. Those are all still required by city resolution. Those meetings are not currently governed by the Open Meetings Act if it's an advisory committee. And many of our committees and boards are advisory in nature. There's a few like the Planning Commission, the Historic Review Board, or Districts Review Board, and then certain other grant-making committees that would be held to the Open Meetings Act without the city's additional protections that the city's put into place. And then the city does a lot of things that aren't required under Open Meetings Act, like YouTube, Comcast for or cable for city government for governing body meetings, and the radio for governing body meetings, and those types of things. Those are all extra things the city does. But no, so they're not subject to those virtual meetings are not compliant with the Open Meetings Act.
And in order for them to be so, that would be a resolution?
Chair Long, Commissioner Pettis, it would actually require a change to the state's Open Meetings Act.
Okay.
But the reason we can't change the Open Meetings Act. And so we've only allowed advisory committees to do the 100% virtual meetings. Because we do have control over advisory committees parameters, which is so it would be something to think about. Do we want to place that control outside the city by subjecting meetings that wouldn't otherwise be subject to the Open Meetings Act to the Open Meetings Act under the charter? And we have started to experiment with tweaks at the local level, including the 100% virtual. So that would not be permitted with that change to the charter.
Thank you, Aaron. I think what's coming to my mind is in these years of COVID and everything else where we've done so much virtually, I think it would behoove us all to have those all virtual meetings also subject to the open meeting. Just to, keep up with technology and the way that things are moving and making sure that we're allowing the public to attend all these meetings.
Well, but at this point, the problem with that is that virtual meetings are not allowed under the Open Meetings Act unless the whole body for that particular meeting found it difficult or impossible to attend. That's the real problem with virtual meetings, and maybe someday that will change, but that's the state law. That's the problem, is that to attend all virtually, and that's why, we can, because we're advisory, and so we can have a virtual meeting, but otherwise you can't. And I think it's been difficult for a lot of public bodies because people got used to that pattern of being able to, they didn't have to travel anymore. They didn't have to find parking. The public was able to participate easier, although they've still kept that for a lot of city meetings for the public attendance, but for the, everyone else can attend virtually, but the members cannot unless it's difficult or impossible. That's the problem. And we need a change in the State Open Meetings Act. That's what we need. Yeah. Okay, Commissioner Ives.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, and you've suggested an interpretation of that statute that I honestly was unfamiliar with, which was that the difficult or impossible had to relate to presumably everybody who is on the Board or Commission in terms of being able to hold a virtual meeting. I always thought it would apply to a variety of members. So for instance, if you had a 102-year-old gentleman who lived in Las Cruces, who was on a board of a state agency entity that, because that travel was certainly nothing if not difficult,
Mhm.
and certainly might have been impossible at times, that the attendance by that person virtually was accepted.
I think it would be. So what I was saying is that the meeting would have to be noticed in person for everyone. And if there are certain members that the example you gave, certainly it would be difficult or impossible for him to attend every meeting that they had, unless maybe there was one in Las Cruces, and he could get there. But it would probably look odd if every single member said it's difficult or impossible for me to attend, and it's all virtual. It probably would not be accurate. But the meeting itself it's supposed to be in person.
Yes, unless those exceptions apply.
Right, as applied to the individual. You're right, not the body.
Gotcha. Because, and obviously, much of that was effectively suspended during COVID, when public health orders prevented meetings from occurring, but the law still required meetings to take place. So I think it would be fine to add a provision that covered, if people have a difficult or impossible time to have hybrid meetings. And I think that would be within not only the state law, but also prudently within the city's pronouncements on this type of issue.
Chair Long, Counselor, I absolutely agree with what you're saying. What it would not allow is the 100% virtual by vote of the commission, so we have a couple of those opportunities on our calendar today, on your agenda to vote to have a 100% virtual meeting, because the chambers are only available during limited times in the next 12 days. That would not be an option under the proposal. That's my primary point. Chair Long, Commissioner Ives, if you modify it to say hybrid, it will not allow for 100% virtual.
Madam Chair, is the concern the state law or the city procedures and ordinances?
Chair Long, Commissioner Ortiz, the state law does not allow for 100% virtual, but the state law also does not apply to advisory committees. The proposal would make the state law apply to advisory committees, which the city has done in large part. And it has now made this exception to allow for 100% virtual for its advisory committees only, the ones that are not subject to state law otherwise, except for the city policy.
Advisory. Mhm.
Thank you. So Madam Chair, and I just reread the language again, Commissioner Ives had. So the language is written, could be forwarded, and then we could allow the counselors to determine how, so that we show them the intent, our intent. And the counselors then could adjust it accordingly. But it's a very basic statement that says it shall apply to advisory committees. And then that way they know where we stand in terms of our thought process. And that was one of the recommendations by one of our public members. So I don't have a problem with moving that forward. I think it makes sense. Counties and school districts and cities are all dealing with that and have been dealing with that as we speak. So I think it's a good best practice. It's good business. It's great for transparency. And I think we should promote that and let the city councils determine what they're going to do with it.
Any other discussion on that? All right. What else do you have, Commissioner Ives?
A proposal was submitted that reads as follows: recognizing the importance to the Santa Fe community of procedural due process of law, a quasi, sorry, and I may have cut off some of this. Unfortunately, this was submitted by Mr. Throne. Oh, what happens? It's the dealing with quasi judicial process. Thank you. Starting again, Recognizing the importance to the Santa Fe community of procedural due process of law and fairness in proceedings addressing land use and other matters that require city decision makers to act in a quasi judicial manner, the city shall adopt procedural rules that ensure that all quasi judicial proceedings conducted by the governing body and city commissions and boards adhere to established principles of procedural due process of the law and fundamental fairness, and apply these principles in an impartial manner to applicants and members of the community who participate in those proceedings. So would certainly propose we take that up as a topic. I think, and I hope the other commissioners on my committee will speak up if I'm speaking out of turn, but we would be happy to look at that issue and report back at the next meeting.
I think this is already a topic that was assigned to your committee, Commissioner Deerdak, but has been, I think, restated in this way. So if your committee could look at that language, because I think it's already a topic that we voted on, right?
I'll follow your leadership on that. I think it'd be helpful to all of us if we noticed that this attempt at writing accomplishes a lot that the earlier version, which we also received from some people in the community, did not. And so I guess what I can imagine in the governance committee is that we would substitute the Thune proposal or the Johnson proposal in that item and then react to it maybe even differently, because it's just it approaches the matter from a charter perspective more cleanly, seemed to me when I read it. And so maybe this gives us an opportunity.
Does that sound acceptable to you, Commissioner Ives?
But we'll deal with it in committee and then bring it back.
All right. Are there any other new topics that anyone would like to bring up? Commissioner Ortiz.
Madam Chair. Yes, there was another individual that sent an extensive email regarding ranked choice voting. I'm hoping everyone saw that, and there was also and in his email he references Mr. Milan's newspaper column just recently regarding this. I've been a lifelong resident of New Mexico. I lived in Santa Fe County the majority of my life and just came into the city after ranked choice voting. So I wasn't around when all of the conversations were held. But so regardless, I'm not that familiar with the political environment, but I understand it was quite robust. But his suggestion is that we look at it again and send that recommendation to the counselors. I'm just putting that out there. I'm hoping that you all got the email and saw that. I mean, his explanation speaks for itself. And so I would just put that out there. I guess you would need a motion, Madam Chair, to put that as to vote on whether we want to look at that and send a recommendation to the council or not. And if that's what's needed, I move that we include ranked choice voting as one of the items to forward a recommendation suggestion to the city council.
All right. Is there a second to that motion? Second to the motion?
I'll second him.
Okay. Commissioner Granillo has seconded the motion. Discussion. Yes, my thought on that, and I did see the comment, Commissioner Ortiz, and I did read the the column, is that our ranked choice voting is fairly new for the city. It was approved, I'm reading in the charter. It was approved by the voters of the city of Santa Fe at the March 4th regular municipal election, but it could not go into effect until there was equipment and software that would allow for tabulating of the votes in this manner. So ranked choice voting was implemented beginning with the March 6, 2018 elections. So just in my view, it hasn't been around very long. And I'm not so sure I want to change that up right now with such a short experience with it. That was my thinking when I read the comments. Any other discussion? Yes, Commissioner Pettis.
Thank you, Chair. So my thoughts on this are similar to yours. But also I just want to remind my colleagues that when the previous iteration of this Charter Review Commission made this recommendation to the council put it on the ballot, and 2/3 of the voters of Santa Fe voted to approve this. So I think that calling for the commission to reconsider, we need to keep in mind also that 2/3 of the voters did vote to approve this, a way of voting. And we have to honor that. So other than point that you bring up, Chair, that, we've only had this for a couple of cycles, I think we also need to just make sure that we honor the will of the voters on this issue. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Blondis.
That was exactly Chair Long, my point. I think we've had this discussion in the past regarding other topics, that the voters' voice is the largest voice. And we need to honor that when the people have voted. So they had an opportunity to review the concept, if they chose to, and to vote. And as Maria said, Councilor Pettis said, that was a large majority of the voters that made that decision. So I'm not sure we can yank that back very easily or appropriately. Thank you.
Commissioner Dierdak, thinking about something over there.
May I be so bold as to add another part of this discussion? I read the appeal as Commissioner Ortiz did also, and I read it, the whole thing. It was long. This correspondent writes to us and writes them about as long as I write things, so I'm sympathetic. But it seemed to me that he cited examples. And those examples, if we want to have a discussion about it, we can. But my part of that discussion will be comparing the experience of the examples he cited to the experience of Santa Fe. And the comparison, in my view, will not hold up. So
Comparisons to the other.
what happened in Minneapolis and what happened in Santa Fe were as different as night and day. And so I get the academic discussion about ranked choice voting as a theory. But I was troubled to apply the theoretical argument against it to our actual experience in two cases. That's what just didn't connect for me at all.
It's certainly worth a discussion here, though. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. One more quick point, which is given our recommendation around a ballot initiative, right? And referenda, if that recommendation moves forward and the voters of Santa Fe decide that it actually is not something that's working for them, then they should make that decision and put something on the ballot and have a recall campaign, if you will. But I think that it's just important to honor that, the way that people voted.
Any other discussion? on the motion? And those in favor of the motion? And I have you raise your hands of the motion to place ranked choice voting as a topic. Okay. Okay. So you're voting in favor of it as well, Commissioner Granillo? Okay, Commissioner, Ms. Martin, Commissioner Granillo, and Commissioner Ortiz vote in favor of the motion. And those against, please also raise your hand. And that would be the remainder of the commissioners.
So the motion fails.
Motion fails. Thank you. Okay, any other topics? Thank you. Thank you for letting us discuss that. Okay. All right, let's talk about our meetings, our upcoming meetings and our crunch time. So I know you all responded to a poll that Aaron sent around. And this would be the meeting where we will vote on our topics, right? Oh, sorry about that. Let you get up. Thank you. So it looks like May 3rd at 3 p.m. Aaron, was that the time that most commissioners could attend in person?
Chair Long, I believe that's correct. The two times were May 2nd from 4 to 6 and May 3 from 3 to 5, but I think the third had a few more, or at least one more that could attend.
And that was like 8 of us could attend that one?
Chair Long, that's my understanding. Yes.
Good. Okay,
Madam Chair,
yes,
not that it matters so much because I can get this on YouTube, but I would not be able to attend on Zoom or in person at that time.
okay,
But I can do the minutes from the YouTube.
okay, we'll work that out. So May 3rd, in person here at 3 p.m. And I think, if we can work to get word on our website, I like how it showed up on the city's sort of homepage, I guess you would call it, as a banner. And that may be indicating that the commission will be voting on recommendations to the council at that meeting. And hopefully that will get some turnout. And that we get comments in the meantime as well.
And Madam Chair, there's a quality of life meeting that day at 5, so your meeting would have a hard stop, just
Okay.
so
Thank
you
you.
know.
Okay. And then the plan would be to put those recommendations into a written report that will go to the council. And I would like everyone to weigh in on that written report and approve it. So we would need a meeting then on, would that be May 8th or 9th? And we could do that completely virtually if we vote to do that tonight. Is that right, Aaron?
It's correct, Chair Long. If you want to do one on the 9th, we can put that on your May 3rd agenda. Because we had the options of May 3rd and May 8th on today's agenda. And that's the only type of meeting you need this type of a vote for, and it is because of that specific provision about virtual meetings. Yes.
Right. We have to make that finding. So that we'll vote on that at the May 3rd meeting. We'll put that on the agenda, but I think if we could get a sense of what date works for people, that would be great while we have you here tonight. Yes, Commissioner Blondis?
I could not attend on the 9th if it's in the evening. I'm running another meeting in the community.
Okay.
It would have to mid-afternoon meeting for me to attend.
If we do it on the 9th.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I'm open on the 8th.
On the 8th. Okay. Any other input? Yes, Commissioner Ives.
Madam Chair, I too will be totally out of pocket on the 9th, but the 8th would work fine.
Okay, Commissioner Ortiz?
Just want to clarify the time, May 8th, is that you say is a virtual? So it's not in person, it's not here?
Right, it would be virtual.
May 8th, virtual. What time?
We can agree on that.
Oh, we don't.
I mean, whatever works for people. Yes. Commissioner Pettis.
Chair, I'm unavailable, sort of like this time frame on the 8th,
To be earlier.
it would have to be earlier, but I'm totally available on the 9th.
What about over here to my right?
I could meet any time on the 8th. The 9th, early is better than late.
The 8th is fine for me.
Okay. Looks like we're honing in on the 8th. So we'd like Commissioner Ives to be there. And Commissioner Blondis has some plans too on the 9th. So if we could do the 8th, and it needs to be before 5.
Chair Long, would you like to go ahead and should we go ahead and get that motion so we can just put it on the calendar and have it available for the public to be aware of? Or we can wait till next week, either one.
And we make that motion even though that date's not on there.
Oh, we were looking at the 8th, I think, right?
Mhm.
Which is on there.
Oh,
It says May 3 and or May 8th.
okay. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Should we settle on a time then, everyone? Let's do that. On the 8th, I guess we're going to be scurrying around getting that report done and out to you. And that's what we're going to be voting on. So I would suggest the afternoon. But it needs to be before 5. So what time in the afternoon would people prefer?
Any.
Any? Okay. Okay, how about, should we shoot for 1 o'clock? Is that going to work for your office, Aaron? Somebody from your office can be there?
I'm double checking. Let me see. And I am out next week, but one of my staff will be here. We can make that work, Chair Long.
Okay. 1, yes. And I don't think it'll be a 2-hour meeting. It should be an hour or less. If we're just looking at the report, you'll have it in advance. Maybe not very long in advance, but you'll have it. Hope you have time in the morning, everybody.
Madam Chair, do you need a formal motion?
We do need a motion
Both
to
Meetings or just May 8th meeting?
May 8th meeting.
May 8th Zoom meeting at 1.
Yes, a motion that for a finding that it is in the best interest of the public for the Charter Review Commission to conduct a Charter Review Commission meeting on May 8th.
At 1
So moved.
o'clock, So moved.
At 1 p.m. Okay, Commissioner Ortiz has made that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Blondis seconds the motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we'll have that second meeting then. If we need to do something else, we'll do it at our next meeting. So hard to believe it's May, but we will see everyone on May 3rd.
Chair.
Yes.
On that meeting on May 8th, you mentioned a report. Will we be voting item by item for approval off of the report? Or what were you thinking in terms of, and the reason I ask is because there are some elements that we might need additional conversation or not to all support. And I think it would be useful if this commission considered voting on each item individually with a roll call vote, and that way it's clean and it's on the record as to what level of support each item receives. And so I would just ask the commission to consider that roll call vote, item by item, and sail through it, allowing
Yeah, that-
commissioners, if they choose to explain their vote.
Yes, and that is what we will be doing on May 3rd, going through item by item. The report will contain the items that have been approved for recommendation to the council. So those will go into the report and you'll just be approving the report on May 8th. The voting on the items will take place on May 3rd. And we will do them one by one.
So, Madam Chair, so then we really are not allowing another meeting for people to give us comment if we're voting on May 3rd.
No.
Because if we're voting on May 3rd, if we're getting comments, it's a little late to consider their comments if we're voting that day. I'm just trying to
Well-
understand the logistics to make sure we know the process.
Right. Well,
And the media
we'll
knows
hear
what we're doing.
comment at that meeting before we vote. And we'll hopefully continue to get the online comments that may end up influencing your thinking about the items. I really think that's the best we can do.
Madam Chair, one last question. And I should have asked it when the attorney was indicating to us that we had the drop dead date of May 10th to turn in our report. So what are the ramifications if we need an extra week and we don't turn it in on May 10th? Are there any consequences? Just curious.
Chair Long, Commissioners, the resolution does not set consequences for you all.
You'll be
My-
happy to
My
know.
prosecutor will not be filing charges. It is due on May 10th. I think the considerations behind that timeline are so that after that, the council members will have the opportunity to introduce resolutions to put the proposals on the ballot for November, because they also will want to be able to discuss any of your proposals. And they will need to introduce legislation, send it to committees, make a decision, and then educate the public about what's on the ballot. And get it to the county clerk. I can find out that specific deadline that our city clerk will have to send that proposal to the county clerk to make sure it gets on the ballot for early elections and regular elections. I know some of you have been involved in that process before. You might know the deadline better than I do. But it is significantly before November in order to get a proposal on the ballot.
And the council will be hearing from the public, I assume, on these items or ask for it.
Chair Long, Commissioners, the public will certainly have the opportunity through petitions from the floor. There's not an automatic public hearing for a resolution, which I believe is what would be adopted to put something on the ballot, but there's certainly, this is not a quasi judicial matter. There are no limitations on communications from the public, and the public does frequently contact their representatives and frequently attends meetings about all different topics, whether or not they're on the agenda, but this will be on the agenda. It will not have a public hearing necessarily, because it will be a resolution.
So they may hear from their constituents outside of the meetings as well.
That's right.
Okay, Commissioner Ives.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to say, my understanding is the city council does meet on May 10th. And so if it were impossible for the commission to finish its work by that point in time, we could certainly ask that be an agenda item at the meeting, seeking whatever extension we feel might be necessary. So one could solve that procedural issue, presumably in that manner. Beyond that, it's asking for forgiveness rather than permission.
And Chair Long, Commissioners, I would just suggest that if you're going to make that type of request, earlier would be great, because May 10th will, if in order to change that date, they would need to introduce a legislation, which no one has done yet. And the earliest they would be able to do that would be the end of May, I believe on the 31st of May. That's the next council meeting after the 10th. If you were to ask on May 10th for an extension, the next time they would even be able to introduce legislation to extend your deadline would be May 31st.
Yes, I would encourage us to try to make that deadline. I think just the way it all backs up, that's just where we are. Yes, Commissioner Pettis.
Chair, I just have a question about our May 3rd meeting. So we're gonna be hopefully hearing from the public, and we'll have some comment that comes in before then via the website, right? So is it possible for us, if the commission deems it necessary, to break into our subcommittees during that whole commission meeting to address some of the public comment related to our topics or subcommittee, or is that a no-no?
What do you think? Erin?
Chair Long, Commissioners, it's certainly procedurally possible. I mean, that's permissible.
It's a good idea. If need be, yes. You Do you have a comment, Commissioner Dudek?
A small one. I think all of us are feeling the discomfort of having had fewer months than it would take to do this. But as uncomfortable as we may be, I would urge us to pay attention to the amendment to Article 10 that the committee has been recommending. And anyone who expresses that dismay that our work has been rushed and there has not been enough, it's clear by our recommendations to the full council that we felt the same way and that we have proposed a charter amendment to address it in the future because what we've got now is dysfunctional and there's not anybody on this panel who doesn't think so. So I get the point and I share it. And I'm grateful to Commissioner Ives' committee and the four of you on that committee who have taken it straight on and have put matters before the entire community and saying that we ain't going to do it this way again. And here's why and how. And so that goes a long way to giving me comfort about the process that you've just described.
Thank you for those comments. All right, are there any matters from staff?
Chair Long, Commissioners, I did just want to clarify something. So earlier when we talked about Open Meetings Act and quasi judicial, are we adding some of that text to say the website, right? Is that something the commission has decided to post for feedback? I know we took a vote about the ranked choice voting. We're not putting that one up, but should we add Open Meetings Act as another topic to receive public comment about?
That was the sense. We did not take a
Okay.
vote on it, but
Okay, so those two, and then on the quasi judicial, Commissioner Dudek, are you going, would you like us just to substitute what is currently posted or add to it or list it as quasi judicial 2 perhaps, or something like that?
If there's an elegant way to do that, so that it's clear to people who are concerned about it and are reading it, that the subcommittee is going to look at 2 different ways of approaching it, the way we already have and an alternative that's been proposed.
Chair Long, Commissioner Dudek, I'm imagining maybe putting something like 2 proposals in parenthetical, and we can add it to what's posted. Something like that. Is that?
I think that would help the process.
Okay. I think it has been challenging to find a way to express all of these ideas to the public in a way that's easy to provide feedback. We went through various iterations of the webpage. Some of you have seen them. But I think the version now is easier to follow. And I don't want to make it less easy if we're going to add things. So thank you for that. And then I want to say, I will be out of town next week, but Marcos and Pat will both be in the office. And I believe Marcy is here too. So I'll have an out of office, but please work with them if you need anything. I'll be working with them on the agenda for next Wednesday. We'll need to post that tomorrow.
oh yeah, it's Friday
Tomorrow's
again.
Friday. Yes.
It's like we do this a lot lately.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll
I
work
think
on
that's
the
all I
agenda.
have. And I think the reason for needing to vote on the proposals that we were talking through is that we need to be able to know what to put into the proposed report about which you're going to be voting. Otherwise, there's no way we'll have a report available to vote on before the 10th.
Yes, matters from the committee and Commissioner Ortiz.
Clarifying question. I think Commissioner Pettis had a really good suggestion in terms of on May 3rd, that we had some comments that we got at the last minute that were relevant to how we were moving forward, that we might be able to break up in committees. That meeting is set for 3, and I understood that we had to finish by 5. Do we need to start that meeting sooner to allow us time to do that? Because if we don't, we'll be precluded from that option, which I thought is a great option.
Just to make sure that there's enough time.
And if the chambers are available, I'll be happy to make the motion to start the meeting earlier if we need that.
Chair Long, Commissioner, I'm going to check about the availability. I do have an email from the clerk's office with the availability.
I do the minutes for quality of life, and I have it on my schedule as
5 o'clock.
May 3rd at 5 p.m. in the chambers.
Chair Long, Commissioners, I know that quality of life is at 5 PM. I don't know what's before 3 PM. So that's what I was going to look at. Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Other thought, and I don't know if this would be possible, but if we, oh no, I don't think that'll work, because I was gonna say we could break into our subcommittees at 5 and just go to a different room in the building, but we have to take a vote on the item.
Mhm.
Okay, Chair Long, Commissioners, I'm opening the screenshot I received from the clerk's office regarding the availability. It's thinking.
It's trying.
It is blank right now.
Loading. There's a lot there, probably.
Okay, Chair Long, Commissioners, it looks like the only thing earlier that day, that's actually the counselor's conference room. So there is nothing else booked in the chambers before our meeting at 3 at this point.
What would work for the commission in terms of time?
So let's be expansive about it and
Going to
start
be here all day.
an awful lot earlier and then
Get done early.
quit when we're done. But at least we would have the flexibility to do what we need to do.
Madam Chair, our meeting on May 8th is at 1. Shall we start at 1 on May 3rd? Does that work?
For me,
That works for me. Does it work for everyone else?
Not at the moment, because I have to pick up my kids from school, but I can try to work that out.
How about 2? Would that be better?
I have to pick.
Okay,
I can work it out.
okay. All right, so our next meeting will be May 3rd at 1 PM.
So
That'll give us plenty of time.
a move, Madam Chair. You need a motion.
Is there a second? for The motion to meet at 1
Second.
PM on May 3rd. Commissioner Blondes seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay. I think that's a very good idea, and then we won't be jammed up in case it takes longer to get finished up. And we'll just let the absent commissioners know, and hopefully they can make it too. All right, any other matters from the committee? Any matters from the chair? No, I don't have any others. Had plenty tonight. And our next meeting is May 3rd. And at 1 PM. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.